Hi everyone, today we're going to have a quick look at frog drop, what it is and what you can do to try and fix it on your layout if it's something that bothers you. So if we just get the pacer going, now I'm going to run it quite slow so it doesn't derail, but what you might be able to pick up is that it jumps around quite a lot going over the points. These are medium radius, then a curved point, then it's going over, I forget, some long radius points, and it does jump around quite a bit. Now obviously the pacer in real life also jumped around a lot because it was, you know, 2 4-wheel vehicles, and it did bounce up and down, and that's kind of what they became famous or notorious for. However, I don't mind it bouncing and moving a little bit, but when it kind of suddenly drops down over the points, it's a little bit too much, especially if you think this is 1 in 1/48 scale, you know, so a little bit of movement is fine, but you know, we don't want anything too extreme. And that really bothers me about the pacer, and not just the pacer but also other long wheelbase wagons, which we'll have a look at in a minute. And so I decided that I would fill in the gap in the frogs to try and get it to run a bit better. So I'll just stop it there for a second. So on the inner loop, which it's running on now, this is actually a line which is not pacer proof. I've just left that for now. However, on the outer loop I've modified the points on the scenic section, and 1 or 2, such as this one here, which you might be able to see the white bit of plasticard. I've modified them to try and stop the drop, and the reason why you get this drop is basically because the points are quite an old design now by Peco, and the flangeway is slightly deeper than it really needs to be. And older models, they might have a bigger wheel flange, so then you know that they might need it, but newer models don't tend to have that kind of very thick flange. They have more shallow wheel flanges, so they could actually be marginally shallower. So here's one here that I've not adapted at all, and it's this bit here. If I just move out a bit, it's this bit here where my finger's running now that you have to kind of modify, and that's where I've put plasticard in on this one here. So let's go to the front of the layout now, and I've got a set of points to have a closer look at. Right, we're around the front of the layout now, and I've got a spare Electrofrog, medium Electrofrog point, Peco, code 55, to have a look at. I would imagine that code 80 has got a similar issue, but I never had a pacer when I had code 80, and I can't really remember now, but I should think it's all the same. So what I've done is I've cut out some bits of plasticard and I've filled in the frog gap. I've done it with 2 bits of plasticard, a tiny little triangle bit here, and then a kind of V-shaped kind of piece with a bit cut out there, a bit like a very thin chevron really. So what you have to do if you want to modify your points is get some plasticard. Black plasticard would probably be better, obviously, but I've only got white at the minute, and I believe what I used on the scenic section was 0.4 mils. So basically between 0.3 and 0.5 you might have to do a bit of experimenting to see what works. Then get your point, or you might have one of those kind of cut out templates of a set of points, in which case you can make it more accurate in the way that you cut out the bits of plasticard. And you need to make sure that the bits of plasticard sit properly. They don't want to be raised up at all against the rail. They want to sit properly inside the flangeway. Basically you cut it out, check it fits, then test a few trains over it, then paint it black so that it's not visible. And then once you've really extensively tested everything over it and you're happy with it, then just use a very tiny bit of super glue and super glue it in place. So if I come back now to the scenic section, so on the outer loop I've pacer proofed it, So you probably won't be able to pick it up, but this set of points here, that's got a piece of plasticard painted black in there. And then if I just come up here a second, just move this loco out of the way. This one as well. This has got a piece of plasticard painted black in there. So basically all I've done is on the scenic section on my layout, I've just pacer-proofed the outer loop. It doesn't need to use the goods line anyway, so I only run the pacer, or nearly always only run it on this outer loop, and it was only this point here and then this point here on the crossover that I had to adapt. So it was only actually 2 points that I needed to do it on, but I've also done a few in the fiddle yard just because whilst I was doing it I thought I might as well make it run a bit better in the fiddle yard. So you'll also benefit from this method if you're running long wheelbase wagons such as this ferry van from the Engage Society, but also VGAs, VBAs and other vehicles that are liable to fall into the frog gap. So what I'm going to do now is run the pacer over onto the outer loop, and then you can see it running, and you can notice hopefully that it's running fairly smoothly, or at least a lot smoother than it would do if it was running on the non-pacer proofed inner loop. Okay, so here comes the pacer. This is on the inner loop still, so you'll notice it jumps around quite violently. Passengers no doubt spilling their drinks. So I'll just run it round to the crossover. So let me just change direction and change this set of points. Okay, just make sure it throws properly. So now I'll run it back over onto the outer loop, which is where it normally runs. Right, so now it's on the outer loop. Let's just change the line again. I'll come round a little bit so hopefully you can get a bit of a better view. And just move that loco out of the way. So here it comes past the 31. Give it a bit of power. So now it's going over the modified set of points, and you can see it hardly moves at all. Just, you know, obviously you're never going to get it perfectly smooth, but it's a lot better than the unmodified points. So then I'll just run it into the station and stop it there. Right, we'll just have another look round the back now at some of the points that have been modified in the fiddle yard as well. Right, we're around the back now, and the points on the outer loop here have been modified. The crossover has. Sorry, I don't know why the motor sounds horrendous. It sounds a bit like a bumblebee, so I'll just slow it down a bit. So here it comes. It's going over a modified set of points there. You can probably see the white plasticard, a modified set there, and another modified set here. Although it did jump a little bit round there, so perhaps I need to do a bit more work on it. So then if we just follow it up to the other end, at this end we've got another modified set of points here. It should be alright. Fairly smooth over that set there. Then we'll just give it a bit of power. And I'll just run it round and stop it in the station for now. So if you're bothered by frog drop, this is what I would recommend you doing. Do a little bit of experimentation to check whether it's 0.35, 0.4, 0.45, 0.5. 0.5 is probably going to be too much actually. From memory I think it was 0.4 that I used on the scenic section when I modified the points, and that's the one way of resolving it. Now what I would say is, if you run a lot of old stock, or you run some very light 060 locomotives, you might actually create problems by fixing this frog drop problem, because if the locomotive is very light, it is possible that it could somehow very slightly lift up going over the set of points if you filled in the flange way. And if you're running very old wheels when they were like pizza cutters with massive flanges, again, you could create problems. It's often the way in life, you fix one problem and create another one at the same time. But I think it's probably worth doing if you've got a pacer. Most of the other stock I run on the main lines anyway is not got a problem at all. The only other wagons that do benefit from the frog drop, as I mentioned, are these long wheelbase VGA wagons here, and the ferry wagons as well. But Bowie stock short four wheelbase wagons, they're absolutely fine. They'll run over any type of points really. So yeah, that's my short video for today. Hopefully it's been useful. It's not my original idea, I should point out. I read it on a forum, and I think it might have been an American model railway forum ages ago. And I know other people who have modified their points. They've used resin, or they've used card and things like that to modify the flange way, but plasticard honestly seems to be the easiest, because you can draw out a template, or you can just do it by eye on the card, cut it out and stick it in place. And the good thing is, because it's quite a tight fit, you can test it like that, and you only then have to glue it in when you're happy with it and you've painted it and you've tested all your stock over it. So yeah, if you want to make your pacer run a bit smoother, or your long wheelbase wagons, that's what I'd definitely recommend people try. So thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon with a rolling stock review. Cheers, bye.